Welcome. I'm Chris Cross, and here's today's MMA news. First and foremost, Paul Felder is saying that Ian Machado Garry will be rewarded for taking this main event fight on short notice. Now, if you haven't heard this, Ian Machado Garry is stepping up, and he's going to take on Carlos Prates on April 26th. This is UFC Fight Night in Kansas City, so UFC Kansas City, and this is a big deal. I mean, Ian Machado Garry does not have to take this fight, right, to headline a UFC fight night. Now, is he above that yet? Not really. I mean, he lost to Shavkat in a very good fight, close fight. Uh, but if Shavkat goes on to win the title and Ian Machado Garry can win this fight, then, you know, Garry is in line for a title fight, a potential rematch at some point, because that fight was a decision fight. It was close enough to where he can argue for a rematch. And this is being reported by MMA Junkie, but this is what uh, Paul Felder had to say to ESPN. These are the moments that, or excuse me, let's backtrack. I've got to give a huge shout out to Ian Machado Garry for stepping in yet again against a top contender, against a very tough opponent like Carlos Prates, who's just been on a roll since he's entered the UFC, KOing everybody, finishing everyone, he told ESPN. But Ian Garry knows these are the moments that you have to take advantage of. These are the moments that the UFC is going to give you favors later on in your career, is going to try and help push you to the top. You scratch their back, they'll scratch yours. I love it. He's showing that he's got the toughness and is not afraid of anybody in this division. So this is what he's telling um, ESPN, and this is being reported by BJ Penn, quotes from MMA Junkie. So a lot of news outlets reporting on this, but this is what Paul Felder is telling ESPN. Now, this remains to be seen, right? Just because you do a favor for the UFC does not mean they're necessarily going to do a favor for you. It all depends on and is relying on the fact that you win. And what do we always tell you? Don't invite Brazil to the party, right? Now, Gary's from Ireland, Prates from Brazil, but you're inviting Brazil into this party in a main event, and it's basically an even fight. I mean, in terms of Prates, it's even. In terms of Garry, he's a slight favorite, but the fight is very close. Ian Garry 27, Prates 31, and this will go down on April 26th. So we still got 18 days. So it's short notice, but it's not that short. Uh, Ian Garry with just the one loss against Shavkat, so he's still at the very top, right? I mean, he's at the very top. And it is admirable that he's taken the fight on short notice, and it's a main event. Really, a fight he doesn't have to take. He could wait and prepare for 3 or 4 months, but he's like, "Now, I'll fight now. I'll take on Carlos Prates. No problem. Bring on the Brazilian, right? Let's do it." So I'm highly intrigued by this fight. Hopefully, we're 7-6 at this point because we got Diego Lopez winning this Saturday night. If you didn't see the podcast posted yesterday, go ahead and check that out. We go through all the predictions in detail, more of a preview than anything. So you want to check that out. And as far as the main event, right now, people weighing in the poll, 59% to 41% believe Diego Lopez is going to win that fight. Okay, so I feel a little better, right? Sometimes I like going against the percentages in turn when we post these polls. It makes it more fun. But right now we're 6-6. We need a win, and I feel better uh, that MMA fans are kind of on my side on this one. Although it's still within 60-40, right? It's still within the margin of error. So but more people believe in Diego Lopez can win the belt over Volk. And I think again, like I said the other day, hope has a lot to do with this. A lot of us hope that he can pull this thing off, right? We don't want to see Volk win the fight knowing that he lost to the true champion Ilia Topuria. If Diego Lopez wins, then we can say, well, maybe he beats Topuria. We don't really know, right? You could make the case that that's a possibility. Now, Paddy Pimblett is all over the place because he's in the co-main against Michael Chandler, right? We have Paddy Pimblett winning. Sneak peek if you haven't seen the long form podcast. But he said on the Full Send podcast, and this is about Arman Sarukian, who had to pull out of a title fight the day before, which is crazy. The only person in the top 10 I can think of who's under 35 is Arman Sarukian. He's just a little boy who's had everything handed to him on a silver platter by his dad. No, he didn't get injured. You know, that's what you are, Arman, a little boy, along with some, you know, other words thrown in there. So, he went on the Full Send podcast. He's putting Arman Sarukian on blast. He's already thinking, okay, if I beat Michael Chandler, who's the next obvious opponent? That's going to be Arman Sarukian, who's not getting a title fight anytime soon. So that's a possible matchup. And I mean, on one end, you don't like to see guys look ahead, but on the other end, Paddy Pimblett has come into the UFC. He's won 6 straight. He's taken his money uh, from what he says in other quotes that he started out at 10 and 10,000 to show, 10,000 to win, then moved up to 12 and 12, right? Talking about when he first signed with the UFC, and then of course he wins those 2 fights, and then his deal goes up big time after that, and will only get bigger if he can beat Michael Chandler this Saturday in the co-main. So on one end, you don't like to see fighters get ahead of themselves. On the other end, I like the fact that he's very confident and he's looking forward. Should he win the fight against Chandler, he already has an opponent that he's looking at. And that's a big deal if you ask me. I mean, he already has an opponent in mind. And even Dana White will tell you that I mean, and especially the announcers, Joe Rogan and Cormier and all them, like, have a plan if you do win. Have a name ready. This is who I want to fight. It's like throwing some mud at the wall to see what sticks. If the fans like it, they're going to start saying, "Oh gosh, Paddy Pimblett versus Arman Sarukian." You kind of get everything rolling, and the UFC is not necessarily obligated, but they're going to give the fans what they want, especially when it's a guy like Paddy Pimblett and Arman Sarukian who could eventually fight for the title. And because Arman had to pull out last minute and really hurt the UFC in that situation, they would love to see Paddy Pimblett fight Arman Sarukian. So that's a very viable fight. But listen, don't ever count out Michael Chandler, despite the fact that, like Paddy Pimblett said, everyone's older than 35. It seems like it's an aging division, and these older fighters for a long time, like Gaethje and Poirier especially, starting to break a little bit now, held the top of the division underneath of Oliveira and Makhachev for a while. But now you got some young new guys like Arman Sarukian and Paddy Pimblett and others coming. But can he beat Michael Chandler? I mean, that's really the question. That's the question that needs to be answered, and it's going to be answered this Saturday, right? In terms of the odds for this one, of course, things are changing minute by minute, hour by hour, kind of like the stock market, really, right? You could write an article right now and it could sound great, and you could write an article an hour from now, it could sound terrible. That's just the way it goes. But right now, Paddy Pimblett is still the favorite. USA versus England, co-main event, 23-9 versus 22-3. He's still the favorite. Not really close to even, but it's not 2-1, right? It's not 2-1, so it's still relatively close. Chandler's like plus 130 underdog, so it's still considered close. Lightweight division, anything can happen in this division, and highly intrigued by this fight. Can't wait to see it, and can't wait to see who's going to pull this thing out. Quite frankly, I mean, a fight that can go either way. The lightweight division is is the best division in the UFC. It's the one where it's the hardest to predict. It's the one where you're going to see grappling, you're going to see takedown defense, you're going to see fast-paced striking. I mean, everything is going to be there in front of you, and this is all coming in just a couple days. And of course, we'll be live on YouTube on Saturday night, so you want to check us out there. We will post it on Spotify and everywhere else you get your podcast after the fact, but we will be live, so check us out, right? YouTube.com/at TCMMA podcast. But for now, that's the MMA news. Until next time, I'm Chris Cross. Peace.